The metal key in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Not just physically. There was a weight to it, a history that pressed against my palm like a living thing. I traced its jagged edge with my thumb, the ridges biting faintly into my skin as I stared at the chipped white door in front of me. That door hadn't changed. The paint still peeled in thin, curling strips, revealing tired, grayed wood beneath. The old brass handle was tarnished, the same stubborn lock I used to jiggle when I came home late from school. And I could still remember the way it had slammed behind me 12 years ago, that violent final sound that echoed down the street as I stood outside, 15 years old, holding a single fraying backpack and nothing else. It was cold that night. The kind of cold that bites through your clothes and finds the bone. I remember staring at my breath curling in the air, half hoping she'd open the door, half knowing she wouldn't. I had thought then that my life was over. I had no idea it was only beginning. Now my reflection wavered in the dusty front window, a faint smirk threatening the corners of my mouth. I shifted my weight on the creaking porch boards, my heels clicking softly in the quiet. Somewhere inside, my mother was pacing. She'd already called me 3 times today, each one ignored. She probably thought I'd cave. She didn't know that I didn't need to call her back. She'd know soon enough. I glanced up and down the street. It was still the same working-class neighborhood, though more tired now. The yards were patchy, fences leaning with age. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once, then stopped. The faint hum of traffic drifted in from the main road. Her voice rang in my head, sharp as glass, clear as if she were standing right beside me. If you can't follow my rules, you can't stay in my house. Go figure your life out somewhere else. No agits. Hesitation. No second chances. Just the flat cruelty of someone who knew she had power and wanted to use it. It had been midwinter then, the sky a flat, oppressive gray. I remember the sound of her footsteps fading inside, the soft click of the deadbolt sliding into place. I'd waited on that porch for hours, my fingers aching, my toes numb. The neighbors' curtains had twitched, but no one came outside. By the time I walked away, my tears had frozen on my cheeks. And now, 12 years later, I was here. The deed to this very house tucked neatly in my purse. The front door creaked open an inch. Her face appeared in the gap, thinner now, paler, her hair more gray than I remembered. Her eyes narrowed in confusion, then widened in recognition. "You," she said, voice catching on the word. I didn't move. I just held up the large brown envelope. The edge of the paper was warm from where I'd been gripping it. She stared at it, then at me. "What's this?" "You'll find out," I said evenly, stepping past her into the hallway. The air smelled faintly of the same lavender cleaner she'd always used. For a heartbeat, it was like stepping straight back into my old life. But the girl who'd left here with nothing was gone. I didn't look back at her as I walked deeper into the house. My heels clicked against the same faded linoleum, the same faint dip in the floor by the kitchen doorway, where she'd once screamed at me for spilling juice. The walls hadn't changed, same off-white paint, now yellowing in the corners. Even the crooked family photo above the couch was still there. My father's smile in that picture had always been tight, his hand resting on my shoulder in a way that looked like he'd been told to pose. I wondered if she even noticed the dust covering it now. "Don't just walk in here like you own the place," she snapped from behind me, her voice hardening, regaining its old venom. A bitter laugh almost escaped me. I do own the place, I thought, but I didn't say it. Not yet. That moment needed to land when it would hurt most. Instead, I let my eyes drift to the window over the sink. Outside, the same oak tree stood tall, its thick branches stretching across the yard. That tree had been my escape once. I used to climb it to avoid her lectures, to pretend the world outside this house was bigger, safer. When I was 15, that world wasn't safe at all. Her boyfriend back then had moved in, the kind who made everything feel smaller, the kind who joked in ways that made my skin crawl. I'd tried telling her. She'd told me to stop making trouble. That fight, the one that ended with me on the porch in the cold, started over him. I told her I wasn't staying in the house if he was here. She told me I didn't have a choice. And when I pushed back, she made her choice. She chose him. She didn't care that I had no money. No place to go. I spent the first night in the bus station, curled up on a plastic bench with my backpack as a pillow. The next few months were a blur of couch surfing and sleeping in shelters. Some nights I worked at a diner just for tips, cleaning tables until 2 in the morning. My name is Claire. I'm 27 now. I run a small but profitable design firm, something I built from the ground up, starting with freelance gigs in dingy coffee shops, working until my eyes burned. Every cent I made in those early years went to survival. Rent, food, a cheap laptop. Then, little by little, I started getting bigger projects. I learned how to network, how to make my work impossible to ignore. By the time I was 25, I was signing contracts worth more than my mother made in a year. But no matter how far I got, there was always this image in my head. Me, standing right where I am now, holding the power she once used against me. It wasn't about the house itself. It was about taking back the ground she'd thrown me off of. About walking into this kitchen without feeling like I was trespassing in my own life. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her eyes scanning me like I was still that 15-year-old she could push around. "What do you want, Claire?" she asked finally. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, we'll get to that," I said. Her eyes followed me as I moved around the kitchen, scanning the space like I was taking inventory. I could feel her irritation growing with every second I stayed silent. "You can't just show up after all these years and act like you belong here," she said sharply. "You left." I turned my head, met her gaze, and let the silence stretch just long enough to make her fidget. "No," I said finally. "You made me leave." She looked away, busying herself by straightening the coffee maker cord. "You were impossible to live with. Always starting trouble. Always calling out the men you brought home when they crossed lines," I cut in. My voice was calm, but the edge in it made her flinch. "You mean that kind of trouble?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." I stepped closer, the sound of my heels echoing in the small kitchen. "I was 15, and I knew exactly what I was talking about. But you decided keeping him around was more important than keeping me safe." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. She never did when the truth was too obvious to twist. I let my eyes roam again. The cracked tile near the fridge, the faded floral curtains, the small dent in the wall by the pantry door where she'd once thrown a plate during an argument. It was all still here, frozen in time like a bad photograph. She cleared her throat. "Well, if you're here to reminisce, you've done it. Now go. I have things to do." I tilted my head slightly, watching her try to play the part of someone in control. "Funny," I said, "because I heard you don't have much going on these days." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took my time answering, leaning casually against the counter. "The foreclosure notice on this place, the unpaid property taxes, the fact that your utilities have been shut off twice this year." Her face drained of color. "How do you know about that?" I shrugged. "Public records? You'd be amazed what you can find if you know where to look. And I know where to look." Her voice dropped, defensive. "Things have been rough lately. The economy, bills, rough," I repeated, letting the word hang between us. "Rough enough that you put this house up for sale." She blinked, realization starting to flicker in her eyes. "Wait. No, you..." I didn't answer. I just smiled slowly. Her voice rose, tinged with something I'd never heard from her before. Fear. "You didn't." "Oh, I did," I said quietly. For the first time since I'd stepped through the door, she was the one who looked small. Her shoulders hunched, her hands gripped the edge of the counter. She didn't move when I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope again, placing it gently on the table. The air between us felt charged, heavy. I could see her fighting to piece it together, to find some way to dismiss it before she even opened it. But she could, yet her fingers hovered over the envelope like it might burn her. "What is this?" she asked, voice brittle. "Go ahead," I said softly. She hesitated, then slid a nail under the flap and pulled out the stack of papers. Her eyes scanned the first page. I saw it. The exact moment she realized what she was holding. The deed. Her gaze snapped to mine, searching for some crack in my expression that would explain this away. "No," she whispered. This can't be real." "It's real," I said. "Your house was listed 3 months ago. I put in a cash offer the day it hit the market. The seller didn't even blink." She stared down at the papers again, flipping through them like there had to be some loophole. But why would you... Why?" I stepped closer, my shadow falling across her. "Because 12 years ago, you made sure I had nothing. You made sure I froze on a bus station bench instead of sleeping in my own bed. And I decided a long time ago that when I finally had something, I'd take back what you stole from me." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "And here's the fun part," I continued, my voice low but deliberate. "The sale is final. This house, every board, every brick, every memory, belongs to me now. Which means you," I gestured around us, "are standing in my kitchen." Her face crumpled, the bravado slipping away. "You can't just throw me out." "Can't I?" I asked, my smile sharp. "Legally, I can, and I will. You have 30 days to get your things and leave." Panic flashed in her eyes, quick and ugly. "I don't have anywhere to go." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Funny. That's exactly what I said when you kicked me out, and you told me to figure it out." The color drained from her face. "You're not serious," she said, her voice cracking. "Oh, I'm dead serious, but..." I let the word linger, watching her hope flicker for a fraction of a sec. I'm not heartless. You have 2 options." She looked up, desperate. "What options?" "1, you pack your things, you leave quietly, and I never hear from you again. 2, I pulled out another folded paper from my bag and laid it on the table beside the deed. "You stay, as a tenant. You'll pay rent, in full, on time every month, in writing, and if you miss even 1 payment, you're gone." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You want me to pay you? To live here?" I leaned in, close enough for her to smell the expensive perfume I'd put on for this exact moment. "I want you to understand what it feels like to live in a place that isn't yours. To wonder every day if you'll still have a roof over your head next month. To depend on someone else's mercy." She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling over the documents. The balance of power had shifted completely, and we both knew it. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in on her. She sat down at the table without me asking, the deed still clutched in her hands like it might magically reverse itself if she held on tight enough. "You don't have to do this," she said finally, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. Not from anger, from fear. I circled the table slowly, letting my heels strike the floor in steady, deliberate beats. "I do have to do this. Not because I need a place to live. I already have one. Not because I need the money. I make more in a month than this place is worth in a year. I'm doing this because I want you to feel it." "Feel what?" she asked, her voice cracking. "The way it feels when your security is ripped away. The way it feels to look around and realize the roof over your head isn't really yours." I stopped behind her chair, leaning forward so my voice was right by her ear. "The way it feels to be disposable." She flinched, just slightly, but it was enough. I walked back around the table and set my phone down in front of her. The screen was lit, a digitized lease agreement open and ready to sign. "This is your 30-day notice. Sign it as a tenant or start packing." She stared at the phone, then at me, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "You're really going to make me pay you to live here?" I shrugged. "Think of it as a discount. Market rent's higher than what I'm asking. I'm feeling generous." Her eyes flashed with something, maybe the last flicker of her old defiance, but it faded as quickly as it came. She looked down at the papers again, her hands trembling. "You've changed," she said quietly. I let out a humorless laugh. "No, I've always been this way. The difference is, now I have the power to act on it." For a moment, The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I stood there, watching her wrestle with herself, the way her pride and desperation battled across her face. Finally, she picked up my phone and signed. Her name appeared in sharp digital ink at the bottom of the lease. I took the phone back and glanced at it, then slipped it into my bag. "Congratulations," I said. "You're now renting from your daughter." The look on her face was worth every sleepless night I'd ever spent working to get here. But I wasn't done. I pulled another envelope from my bag, this one thinner, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked warily. "Your first rent invoice," I said, my tone light but edged with steel. "Due in 10 days. Don't be late." She didn't open it. She didn't have to. I stepped toward the door, pausing in the hallway. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, turning back to meet her eyes. "If you think this is me forgiving you, you're wrong. This isn't forgiveness. This is payment. And you'll be making it every month." Her mouth opened like she might argue, but nothing came out. She just sat there, small and silent, as I walked out the door. The same door she'd once slammed in my face. Only this time I closed it gently behind me. The air outside felt different. Lighter, cleaner, like the moment after a storm when the clouds break and the world exhales. I stood on the porch for a moment, fingers brushing over the cool brass key in my pocket. It was mine now. Not just the key, but everything it unlocked. The same street stretched out before me, but it didn't feel the same. Back then, these houses had seemed like walls holding me in. Now they were just scenery. I'd outgrown this place long ago. I walked to my car, heels clicking against the uneven pavement. The engine purred to life, but I didn't pull away right away. Instead, I looked back at the house. Her house. My house. Through the thin lace curtains, I could see her still sitting at the table, the envelope and papers spread out in front of her, shoulders slumped, head bowed. I wondered if she was thinking about the night she told me to leave, about how I'd stood on that same porch begging for her to change her mind, about the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place while I stood on the other side, shivering. If she remembered, she'd never admit it. But she didn't need to say it out loud. I saw it in her face. The realization that she no longer held the upper hand, that the power she'd once wielded like a weapon was gone. I thought about all the years in between. The nights I'd slept in strange rooms, the meals I'd skipped so I could save enough for rent, the times I'd worked through exhaustion so bone deep it felt like my body might give out. I'd built my life piece by piece, brick by brick, without her help. And now, I'd taken back the ground she'd stolen from me. It wasn't just revenge, it was reclamation. I slid the gear shift into drive, but before I pulled away, I let myself take one last long look. The cracked porch boards, the crooked gutters, the same oak tree in the yard, leaves whispering in the afternoon breeze. It had all been a cage once. Now it was a trophy. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel pity. What I felt was balance. The kind of balance that comes when the scales finally tip in your favor after years of being weighted against you. The memory of her voice floated through my mind one last time. "If you can't follow my rules, you can't stay in my house." I smiled to myself and whispered under my breath, "My house. My rules." Then I drove away, the afternoon sun spilling across the road ahead. As the house disappeared in my rearview mirror, I knew she'd spend the rest of her days with that reminder. That every month, she'd have to hand me a check. That every time she unlocked that door, she'd be stepping into something that wasn't hers anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she'd think about the night she chose someone else over her own daughter. That was the real revenge. Not just owning the house, but making sure she lived every day knowing she'd given me the chance to take it from her. Some debts aren't paid with money. They're paid with time, humiliation, and the cold knowledge that the person you discarded came back stronger. And I intended to collect